Hi, my name is Mike Lewin and I'm running for Manhattan Borough President. In this video, which is a much shorter version of another of my videos, I'd like to address one very common argument against new market rate housing, which is, well, if we build housing, it'll just be these super talls that are bought up by out-of-town investors and they'll be vacant 99% of the time. It seems to me this argument is wrong primarily for two reasons. First of all, to the extent that this is even true of these so-called super talls, it's really a pretty small slice of even the new housing market. That is to say, when we're talking about buildings like 432 Park Avenue, we're talking about buildings where condos sell for 10, 20, 30 million dollars. And that's really a very small proportion of even new building. That is to say, if you look at Zillow.com and if you look at most newer units for sale, and even in Manhattan, they're selling for $2, $3, $4 million, which is certainly very expensive, certainly a lot more than I can afford. But in New York, we have a lot of people who are earning $500,000 to $1 million, people who work in big law firms or in finance who can absolutely afford these. So most market rate housing, it seems to me, is almost certain to be bought up by locals, even if they're condos, even if they're in New York City. Second of all, even if you assume that every new building was bought up by a foreign investor, well, what happens if you don't build the buildings? Do the foreign investors magically go away? Do they just move to California or something? I don't think so. The reason people invest in real estate is to make profits. And you can make profits just as easily on an old building as you can in a new one. In fact, an old building might be lower risk, but as a new building, you never know what's going to happen with maintenance failures. So like if I put $60 million in 432 Park Avenue, it's high risk, high reward. Yeah, it could keep getting more expensive, but on the other hand, if people realize it's unlivable, maybe people might put their capital somewhere else. By contrast, if I buy a walk-up in the West Village, I know it's probably going to appreciate because walk-ups in the West Village have been appreciating for decades. And if I have enough money, maybe I'll buy 5 or 10 of them. So why would that be bad? Well, then our hypothetical out-of-town investors would be essentially bidding up the price of real estate, competing with local buyers. By contrast, if these out-of-town investors are just buying the newer units, at least the price of older units isn't going to go up quite as much as it otherwise would. So for further details, you can look at my longer video, but this is at least a summary.